Hey there, guys. Alright, today we are back with some more of the Great War. This time we're on a week 127. Turmoil in Russia. The assassination of Rasputin. Rah, rah, Rasputin. What the fuck was the song? That's about all I remember from the song. Not gonna lie. Anyways, before I dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you joined the Discord and followed me over at Twitch. Okay. Lower the mic a little bit. I look a little bright. I don't know why my camera has made me look super bright today. Super white. I swear, I'm not this white. I have a little. What's that, man?
It's Christmas,
Whoa,
and
loud.
most of the fronts have gone quiet as winter has set in. Not all of them, though, and there are still actions, both major and minor, throughout Europe. But a major political bombshell is dropped this week in Russia as Rasputin is assassinated.
Woo! Crazy man with crazy beard. My nose itches. Yeah.
I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week, the Battle of Verdun, raging since February, came to an end. In Romania, the Central Powers were gearing up to attack the Russo-Romanian forces once again. The British captured El Arish, an important supply point on the Palestine front. The Germans took Russian positions near Kovel, and the turmoil in Greece continued, with the Allies demanding control of the post, the telegraph, and the railways. Both Verdun and the Somme were over. The West.
Kind of funny how the democratic nations are demanding control of the newspapers, of the Post. Right? That's what he said?
The telegraph, and the railway. Greece continued, with the Allies demanding control of the post, the telegraph, and the railway.
Post, telegraph, and the railways. I think they already took control of the newspapers, didn't they?
Both Verdun and the Somme were over. The Western Front was quiet. Here's what went on during quiet. Let's look at December 28th. Between the Aisne and Oise rivers near Quennevières, French artillery pounded the German positions during the day. The Germans were forced to evacuate their trenches. On the left bank of the Meuse, the Germans bombed the French positions between the Meuse and Aboucourt all day long. The Germans also made several grenade attacks in this sector, but they were unsuccessful. That night, British troops made a successful raid against German trenches east of Les Sarres. Also that night, the Germans attacked northwest of Verdun on a 3-kilometer front between Hill 304 and Dead Man's Hill. French machine guns and infantry stopped the Germans, but the accounts from Berlin say that they penetrated to the 2nd and 3rd French lines, taking 222 prisoners, 4 of them officers, and 7 machine guns. Berlin also says the French were unable to retake the trenches. The closing days of the year were not marked by any important military operations on either side. Though no great attacks were attempted, the old business of trench warfare being resumed, the opposing forces continued to harass and destroy each other at every opportunity. This period of peace was really one of ceaseless activity. To prevent the building of defenses or smash them when built, to concentrate gunfire on communications trenches so as to render them impassable, to destroy reliefs coming in or going out, to carry death to the foe in the ditches and dugouts, in short, to injure him in any way that human ingenuity and military science could devise.
You know, we are very good at thinking of ways to hurt each other. Really scarily good at it, quite frankly.
Such were the tactics employed by belligerents during the days and nights when, in official language, there was nothing to report. There was much to report on another German front, though, in Romania. General Erich von Falkenhayn's men attacked the Russians at Rimnițu-Sărat, but to his surprise, they did not retreat. Instead, they offered spirited defense, and the attack bogged down. Also, on Falkenhayn's right, the Danube army under Field Marshal August von Mackensen did not advance, so the Russians could take units from opposite them and throw them at Falkenhayn. Falkenhayn, of course, asked Mackensen to please attack, but he refused, thinking that if he did so, he'd expose his own flank to the enemy. Finally, on the 24th, the Germans...
And there's that good old issue the Germans have showing its head again. We saw this issue, remember, right, all the way back in the beginning in 1914, is that the German generals have a lot of independence in their actions. So you have Field Marshal Falkenhayn telling someone who is his subordinate, "Hey, please attack," and he's not. Now, of course, would I consider is it up? I would probably maybe say Mackinson might be the better general over Falkenhayn. Um, but yeah, the German general leadership has an issue of not being the best at coordinating with each other because they all want to be like on top and responsible for success or some and stuff like that. But of course, also in this instance, of course, uh that is probably not what Mackinson I would consider probably willing to work with his fellow generals, especially Falkenhayn. Um, it's just that he was probably, the concern of exposing his flank was probably extremely legitimate to him at the time. So, but I'm just saying, calling this out as like a wider issue within the German army. Huh.
Broke the Russian trenches on the far west flank, and there was a lot of hand-to-hand bayonet fighting. But still, after 2 days of battle, with not much to show for it, Falkenhayn thought he'd lost the battle. The night of the 24th, he sent his reserves in, and on Christmas Day, Mackinson finally began to move, though he didn't make much headway because his artillery hadn't damaged the enemy trenches. On the 26th, the reserves stormed the Russian lines at 1 p.m. and took the 2nd and 3rd trench lines. On the afternoon of the 27th, the German reserves entered Rimnitzu-Sarat, and the Russians retreated all along the whole line. Over the 6-day battle, the Germans took 10,000 Russian prisoners and 58 machine guns. And speaking of Russians, there was big news in Russia itself this week. Now, there were enormous political machinations in Russia in 1916. Boris Sturmer had been prime minister for much of it. Here's what the story of the Great War has to say about him. Sturmer, where his predecessors had been merely incompetent, now set about consciously to make a separate peace with Germany. And this object he hardly took the trouble to hide. Through censorship, he suppressed the loyal press and encouraged a number of papers which openly denounced Russia's allies and demanded a separate peace with the Kaiser. So openly that it was known all over Russia, even among the peasants, that a separate peace was being prepared.
Dun, dun.
Sturmer suppressed democratic organizations, had Sergei Sazonov, who admired the British and French, removed as Minister of Foreign Affairs and personally replaced him. Yep, he held both offices simultaneously. He was also the Minister of the Interior. During his tenure there, he was responsible for food shortages in the cities. He even encouraged a group of financiers to take control of food supplies, thereby making a huge profit himself at the expense of his people.
No wonder he gets killed in 1917.
And now we introduce Alexander Protopopov, who became Sturmer's Minister of the Interior in September. Protopopov and Rasputin were tight, as were Sturmer and Rasputin, and it was Rasputin's influence at court that got Protopopov his position. Rasputin, by this time, had enormous power over the court of the Tsar and Tsarina, and we're kind of reintroducing Protopopov since we mentioned him last month as having been in Stockholm informally meeting with Germans to talk about a separate peace. Of a deep significance was the appointment of Alexander D. Protopopov as Minister of the Interior. This was the man who was finally to kick aside the last wedge shoring up the tottering walls of the Russian autocracy. It was undoubtedly he who conceived the idea of staging a revolution in Russia, of creating or precipitating a premature uprising, as had been done in 1905, but for a different purpose. The purpose was to create such internal disorder in Russia that the government would have a pretext for making a separate peace with Germany.
Oh.
You could use...
Oh my God, are you fucking serious? He is riling up his own people so that they can have a reason to backstab the Allies and just get out of the war. Wow.
the
I've
revolution.
never heard that about the February Revolution before. Never heard of that. That is insane.
Revolutionaries to cause the disorder, make the peace while everyone was occupied with the uprising, then bring home the troops and easily put down the revolution with the millions of trained soldiers you just brought home. Simple, right?
Yeah.
So
Very convoluted.
placards began appearing at factories, calling for demonstrations and strikes. Actual police agents went undercover into industrial plants and preached revolution. Protopopov was deliberately breaking the machinery of a nation to facilitate a Russian defeat. The Duma, which hadn't met since February, opened November 14th, and it was the last hope of the people. Sturmer was sacked after it was proved that he had received bribes from food speculators for his policies of stupidity or treason. And though Alexander Trepov became the new prime minister, in actuality, it was now a battle between the Duma and the Russian people on one side and Protopopov on the other. But his forces included Rasputin, the Tsarina, and, unconsciously, the Tsar. Protopopov now began persecuting the members and leaders of the social forces. He endeavored to have Paul Milukov, the leader of the Constitutional Democrats, assassinated, but the assassin revealed the plot.
Dun dun dun.
He gathered together former members of the Black Hundreds and recruited them into the police force and trained them in machine gun practice. And finally, he renewed the energy with which he had begun to organize revolutionary disorders among the workers. But this week, a spanner was thrown into Protopopov's works. On the evening hours of December 30th, yes, one day in the future, but some sources say it was the 29th. Anyhow, a group of men drove to Prince Felix Yusupov's house. Among them were Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich and former Interior Minister Alexei Kvostov. They entered the house. A policeman nearby heard shots fired, but didn't dare to pursue inquiries because of the rank of the house's owner. The next day, a hole was found in the ice of the Neva River. Further search revealed the body of Rasputin. Now, there are a ton more details about this killing, and we'll cover them in a special bio episode about Rasputin. Anyhow, the Tsarina was hysterical, and Protopopov fainted when he heard the news. Rasputin was buried with pomp usually reserved for the royal family, with both the Tsar and Protopopov as pallbearers. The people of Russia treated this as if it were a great military victory and celebrated. The details of the assassination were printed in the papers, including the names of the men involved, and they went unprosecuted, mainly because of their rank, but still. That's where we stand as the week comes.
The assassination of Rasputin is just the fucking... This is the craziest story.
To an end.
Great.
Russians retreating in Romania. Day-to-day actions continuing unabated on the Western Front. The British capturing Magdaba in the Sinai, defeating a Turkish force of 3,000. And on December 27th, Joseph Joffre, whose calm and sang-froid had very much saved France in the early days of the war, was promoted to Marshal of France and shuffled out of the way to relative obscurity. And it was Christmas. But of course, there would be no Christmas truce this year, not on any of the fronts. And Rasputin was assassinated. And this was a blow to Protopopov and the conspiracy to intentionally destabilize Russia from within in order to betray its allies and make peace with Germany. Rasputin had wielded great power. Would the separate peace conspiracy die with Rasputin? We shall see in 1917.
Woo.
If you want to...
More war. And that was Turmoil in Russia. The Assassination of Rasputin. The Great War, week 127. This was a really good episode. I extremely enjoyed this one. This one was great. I hope you guys did too. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.